I would like to, first of all, thank Director Thompson for making the time to come today. We met back in October when we were on Zoom and with our National Housing Provider Coalition with our representatives from across the country. You were there, and I asked you if you would come back and talk to us. You're in the process of making a ruling. I asked you if you would come back and talk to us, if you would come to Kansas City, and then if you would talk to us and hear from us, those of us who are on the front line of housing industry. And you said, I'll think about it. And so I was pleasantly surprised when Natalie, we all talked about Natalie, how sweet she is, when she called and said, yes, that you're coming. So we thank you for being here and being willing to listen to our voices. We appreciate that greatly. And Congressman Cleaver, it was a bonus. There's a bonus to have you here as well. And we thank you, and we thank the staff that's here from FHFA, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac, from the enterprises. We thank you for being here and willing to listen to us. I normally talk fast, and I'm going to talk even faster. Because we were hoping for more time, but we always invite you to come back to talk to us. But we're going to condense everything today. If you thought I talked fast before, hold on and buckle up, because I will be talking quickly today. If you want a copy of this, the schedule, you may take a picture of this with your phone. These are our speakers for the day. And when you leave, for the staff, we'll have a packet presentation for you to take with you. But these are our speakers for today. And we thank you all for taking the time to be here. And from our housing industry, we rarely get a chance to speak, and so today is our day to do that. Again, I'm Stacey Johnson Cosby. I'm part of the KC Regional Housing Alliance, and I'm part of the National Housing Provider Coalition. This is our KC Regional Housing Alliance. We are an alliance of housing providers, those of us who provide rental housing in our region. Collectively with these organizations, which are the realtors, it's the landlord organizations, the property management, the investor organizations, those of us who create housing, this is our alliance. Collectively, we represent over 100,000 rental units in our region. So when I say, and when we say today that we are the voice of housing, we are the voice of housing. We always make ourselves available to talk to anyone, from the small investor that may have one or two properties to those who may have thousands in multifamily. The National Housing Provider Coalition, again, is a national group, and we are the small independent housing providers across the country. And you'll hear today that there are 20 million of us providing housing in our community, the largest providers of housing. That's us. And this chart, Dr. Thompson, we showed you this when we were on Zoom. This chart represents who we are. When I say we, this is who we are. The gray represents, this is one of the quarters last year of sales, and I think second quarter 2023. Who is buying the properties? We are. And in the gray are the tier 1 investors that own 9 properties or fewer. We represented 125,000 plus sales this quarter. Everyone's worried about the institutional or the corporate landlords or investors. You'll see them in the royal blue. They represented under 2,000 sales. So we are the providers of housing. Small investors, large to mega investors, 20 million units represented by us. And there it is again, there we are at the top too. And many times, though we are the largest creators of housing, many times we are not in the room when housing policy is being discussed, which is why today is very important to us. We're here today, we've narrowed it down to 3 different tenant protection laws. And these are the ones, Director Thompson, that we know that people are asking you in the ruling that you're going to be making about conventional financing for multifamily rental housing. We know there's 17 senators that ask you to consider imposing rent control on the financing for the creation of those units. We're going to talk about that. And then some of the investor groups and activist groups ask you to talk about source of income, imposing that on the financing, and then just cause or good cause eviction. We're going to go into detail about all 3 of these, but that's what we're focusing on today, knowing that there are a lot more. We hear about cost burden. Many times when we hear about who's cost burden, we hear it about our customers, tenants. But I'm going to tell you a quick story. There is a housing provider here in town. His name is Ron. He owns 70 properties. His family provides housing for 70 families in our market. His property taxes got increased by $50,000 last year. And we all local know that we had a problem with our Jackson County assessment where the Attorney General is now suing them in court in the next couple of weeks, where the auditor has said that your assessment has been flawed, it is incorrect. And we know that because we've worked with some of the people who are appealing, over 3,000 of them. We held workshops to help them appeal their property taxes because the values are too high. People are losing their properties. We have homeowners who are selling their homes because they can't afford the taxes. In particular, a lot of us, so if you imagine you have a problem with one, imagine when you have multiple properties. So at the end of the year, December 31st, he had to write a check for $50,000 to pay for his property taxes. How many of us can pick up on a couple months' notice and write a check for $50,000? He's cost burdened. Add that the increased cost of utilities that we're facing, maintenance, labor, material, and supplies. Out of the blue, the other day, my husband and I had to replace a central air unit out of the blue. And those costs are higher than they were 3 or 4 years ago. Interest rate increases, insurance increases, if you can even get insurance, and then inflation in the economy. And then when we have tenants that are not able to pay their rent, we're paying for our attorney and their attorney. So our costs providing housing are exorbitant. And then on top of that, we have a lot of restrictive anti-business laws that we're facing, including some tenant protection laws and local building codes. Our city council passed an ordinance with building codes that caused the application for home buyer permits, builder permits to drop. All of that is controllable because it's coming from our city hall or our government. And then our customers are cost burdened. We are cost burdened. Our customers, the renters, are cost burdened. We're all cost burdened. And my concern is that when people talk about this, they make it out that we are the bad guys because we're gouging with rents. We are not. We are simply looking at the cost and we're trying to survive. So that is a concern. And we know that the blueprint for Renters' Bill of Rights from the White House said that they're going to try to crack down on unfair prices that are driving up costs. We want you to do that too, but we are not the problem. So help us with the costs that we have, and we can keep our prices down. Many of you know that as local community housing providers and small businesses, that we keep our costs lower than the institutional corporate investors because we're housing our neighbors. Help us keep our costs down, because when we sell, we're selling to the people who don't care about costs, and we will sell if we need to find a friendlier marketplace. Evictions. Everything that we talk about leading to evictions. Why are people being evicted? Why do we have so many evictions? And part of the problem is the cost, when a tenant cannot pay their rent. And so the myth of evictions, what they don't tell you is that 90% plus of evictions are for non-payment of rent. It's not because we're bad guys or we're gouging them or that we're doing something horrible because we're these wealthy old people that are taking advantage of them. That's the narrative. It is not true. If you don't pay the rent, you will be evicted. How do you prevent an eviction? Any housing providers have any thoughts? You pay the rent. And so if someone needs to, we need to address eviction. If it's rental assistance or whatever we need to do, paying the rent stops the eviction. We have another law, right to counsel law locally, that our city council, when they implemented it 3 years ago, they actually allocated $2.5 million for lawyers in an eviction case. Why? If we know that the rent, if you pay the rent, you won't have to worry about an eviction. But when you're paying lawyers, all they're doing is delaying. It doesn't get the rent paid. Use that money for rental assistance if we want to do something to take care of preventing the evictions. Don't have us paying their lawyer and our own lawyers. I was talking to the incoming president of the National Association of Realtors, the year 2025 President Kevin Brown, and he said something that's amazing. He said government has put the burden of taking care of our customers, our neighbors, on our backs, and that now we must restrict our income and our businesses to take care of those who need help, and that is the function of government. So we ask that you please help us take care of our families, because we use real estate to build generational wealth. That's important to us as family businesses, and it's why my husband was able to retire 6 years ago, because we have our real estate business. So it's retirement income for families, and it helps us to have something to pass to our future generations. Real estate is easy to do that, but only when the environment is helpful. These are some of the laws, I'm not going to talk about it, but these are some of the tenant protection laws that are out there. These are the laws that are not meant to create additional housing. Not one thing here creates more housing at a time we're in the middle of a housing crisis. Instead, what they do is they make our jobs more difficult in creating housing. Bob Woodson said it best: you get more of what you incentivize and less of what you punish. Those laws, tenant protection laws, are meant to be punitive. Please make no mistake about that. If you actually look at them, which of those laws create more housing and cause me to want to create more housing? We don't talk enough about home ownership. We know that at the very lowest rung, only 43% of Black families own their homes. Instead of talking about creating a permanent long-term class of tenants, let's talk about creating homeowners. No one's having that conversation with the tenant groups. And I'll tell you something else. I don't need a tenant protection group and a radical socialist activist group to protect my clients from me. We don't need to protect our clients from us. No one's going to take care of my clients better than I will. And so their laws are punitive. This is who they are. If you want to find out, their briefing book is here. and this group is across the country. They're in our marketplace as well. Their goal is to decommodify housing. Should not be bought or sold. It's socialist. They believe that no one should own housing but government. I don't agree. Again, we talk about creating wealth, and they want to disincentivize the speculators, the developers, and the builders, and they've done that. They've stopped some housing in our city as it is, and they're making it difficult for us to create housing. This is what they look like. When they chain themselves to the courthouse doors, they say no rent, stop paying rent. They want free housing. That doesn't work in this economy. This is what they said to me. We did a job fair. They said, here, I think you'll fit nicely. This is who they are. And we make no mistake about it. They disrupt. There's a reason why we have security here today. We're invitation only. They're not productive. We are productive. We are in the business of creating housing. Here's what they say, and it's true. It's unfortunate, but it's true. There's nothing related to housing policy in this town that happens without our approval. People who've never owned a piece of real estate in their lives dictate housing policy in Kansas City, Missouri, while we sit on the sidelines saying we want to help, and we're not invited to the table. Dr. Thomas Sowell, if you know him, he said, it's hard to imagine a more dangerous way of making decisions by putting those decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong. Every day on the line. I don't have a guaranteed paycheck. None of us in our business do. If my tenant doesn't pay rent, my income is gone. So I'm interested in making sure my tenant can pay the rent. Maury, one of our local investors, investor groups, did a survey. This was last year, so the number is higher. The question was, how many of you have sold your properties directly as a result of policies coming out of Kansas City, Missouri City Hall? The answer was 853 units directly as a result of those policies. Work with us and not against us, and we don't have to worry about losing these. And I'll tell you who's buying those properties, out-of-state investors. This is what we were doing during the pandemic. Congressman Cleaver, you worked hard to get millions of dollars and billions of dollars in rental assistance to us. Nobody was talking about how to access it. We did. We created 3 events where we told people. We invited the Kansas Housing Commission, the Missouri Housing Commission. We worked with the United Way, our utility companies, our cities, and we invited everyone here to find out where the money is and how to get the money. You prevent an eviction by paying the rent, and we help people learn how to pay the rent through these events. In any event, some of the other events that we've done, we talked about the taxes, the property taxes, where it was going to tax people out of their homes incorrectly. We hosted an event where we saw over 3,000, we did this at a national level as well, so we can tell other people what we did locally, and here's how to get word out about some of these taxes, some of the rental assistance aid. We helped people, over 3,000 people appeal their taxes so they can keep their properties and stay in their homes. We helped people with the job fair during the pandemic. We did it virtually. We do wealth building workshops so people can own their homes. And then we also come up with ideas, and you're going to hear from Jessa about a pilot program about source of income. We created an affordable housing policy proposal. I asked my peers, what would it take for you to create more housing in this housing crisis? And they answered it. It's in our housing proposal. Here are the 5 things that we proposed to the city. We wanted to work on housing the homeless. We have homes. The way you solve homelessness is to create housing for them. We have that. We had a proposal with 100 vouchers, 100 properties to keep people from being homeless, not a word from the city. We've asked them to adopt our voucher proposal, nothing. We did an innovative housing webinar. We are always doing things to create more housing because that's something that we know. How much did the government pay us to create the housing that we have? $0. 20 million units. It did not cost the government a penny. We pay on our own back. Who houses the homeless? We do. The 3 laws today, as you hear these things today, rent control, source of income, ask how many of them actually create more housing. I heard this said about about crime, and I think it works well in our situation. When we have as much homelessness and lack of affordable housing, we have as much as our elected officials will tolerate. Once everyone gets serious about it, we'll come to the table with the other people working on it, and we will do our part, because if nothing else, we know housing.